Welcome back. So according to a World Bank report, South Africa is the most unequal country in the world. For months then, government has been dealing with proposals around the introduction of a basic income grant to assist the country's poorest. However, a recent report commissioned by Business Unity South Africa says the only way to introduce such a grant in a viable way is by raising taxes. We can now speak to Cas Covadia about this. Mr. Covadia, you're joining us, I believe, from Johannesburg. Always good to have you on Daytime Update. Let's talk about this report, why it was commissioned, and how it's hoped it'll move us forward in the conversation around the BIC.
Well, the basic income grant is being debated broadly at the moment. We had a previous report which talked to whether there's a need for the basic income grant or not, and other options, and talking about looking at this within the context of the broader ambit of social protection. This report, as contributing to the debate, talks about whether we can fund the basic income grant, and so it's concentrating on the funding of this. And what the report is saying, that we looked at three options. The one is whether we can reallocate money from other departmental budgets into funding the social basic income grant, and we feel the report certainly says that that's not possible because most departments are pretty close to the bone in their funding, and taking money away from other departments to put into the basic income grant might have a negative impact on service delivery and so on. Secondly, on whether we can actually do this through raising debt. In the current climate, interest rates going up both here and globally. We're still in sub-investment grade rating status. We believe that raising debt would be very expensive, and raising debt and then applying that to expenditure that does not have an income to service that debt, we believe takes us further into a fiscal debt trap.
And from this report, you say then that economic growth would be rather seriously impacted by an increase in fuel levies, tax on international trade, and corporate tax, which you've put under severe in terms of impact should there be increases in those taxes. How high could they go?
We don't think they should go high. We don't think that, while we're saying that increase in taxation could be an option, we're saying that the circumstances currently do not exist for that to happen. The report talks about a very narrow tax base in this country, very few people paying the bulk of the taxes. If you increase their load, they'll make decisions. They'll make decisions of disinvesting, or and that would be inappropriate for a country that has no growth at the moment, and we're trying to actually get growth going. Given the narrow tax base, if you increase taxes, it's not only higher income people that will bear the brunt of that, but also middle and lower income people, simply given the narrow tax base we have. Corporate tax. Corporates are, post-COVID, just beginning to actually regroup, and businesses beginning to grow. We have an economy that's not growing, so corporates are already looking at investing elsewhere on the continent and elsewhere. If you increase corporate tax and make it uncompetitive to if you compare it to jurisdictions where our corporates can invest, then they'll invest elsewhere. So, if we had a growing economy, if we had a broad tax base, then one could consider this option. But at this point in time, it's not an option. We're just saying that it could be an option at some point in time, if we still want to be. And also remember, just be pointing out that as this debate goes on, the amount of money you need for a basic income grant keeps going up. So now we're looking at something like, if I remember correctly from our report, 300 billion rand. And this isn't a once-off cost. Once you do it, it's an annual cost. And we just believe that the fiscus can't tolerate that right now. conditions do not exist for the only option, which is raising taxes, to be done now. And what we are again reiterating is that we also need to look at this within the context of the broader social protection area, because NHI is on the table, which is part of the social protection package. And there's no way you can afford both a big N and NHI. And we need to look at where our priorities are. We need to look at how we fund those priorities. But at the end of the day, what we've got to begin to give more priority to is to create an environment for investment and growth, because then we employ more people. There's less pressure on social protection measures, and that's the only sustainable way of dealing with the serious and legitimate problems that people actually raise, which is poverty and unemployment and inequality.
Tuma Kubule, writing on the same subject, said that the BIG, the basic income grant, would stimulate the economy, since the recipients would then spend it in local economies where they live. Is that not worth then the short-term pain, as it were, of taxation as it kicks off?
There's no empirical evidence that will have a significant impact on the economy. Absolutely, they'll spend that grant in the economy. But we have to, it's not a question of short-term pain. The question is, where do you get the money from? We just in a situation in the country at the moment where all sources of funding from something like this have just dried up. And that's the situation we are in. So let's be pragmatic about it. It's not, if there was an option to fund this, and particularly if it brings some sort of short-term relief to people who are under severe pressure, of course we would say that we can fund it in this way. But the reality is that we have a fiscus that's under serious pressure. We have departments that are under serious pressure. We have a very narrow tax base, and if you actually put pressure on a narrow tax base, you'll get behaviors that are negative. And that's just the reality of the situation. And we don't have any growth. We don't have sufficient investment. It's to a certain extent a perfect storm. And we've got to look at what actually gets us out of the storm in a sustainable way, and in a way that we can actually put this country onto the path to economic growth.
The immediate question then, with a soaring cost of living, food, fuel, all more expensive than ever, transport costs as well, is what do we do then to assist the poorest South Africans when this temporary 350 grant comes to an end in early 2023, at least if there's no further extension, as was done in the State of the Nation address or the budget this year?
Yeah, so look, I mean, we need to control inflation, getting it back to the 3 to 6% range. How do we do that? What are the factors that contribute to an increase in inflation? One of them are administrative prices. Control that. Manage local authorities better so that people aren't paying too much for rates and taxes and electricity and so on and so on. There's moves now we read to deregulate fuel pricing, which will also go some way towards decreasing the price of fuel. So there are levers that government can pull to actually make it less onerous on people and to allow prices to go down. We've been saying in our agricultural sector, has the potential to actually do much better than it is doing and produce food for this country. But there are blockages, red tape and other blockages in the way. And so what we are saying is that there are levers government can pull to begin to unblock some of these things. Levers government can pull to actually reduce administered prices, which often increase way above inflation, while private sector wages and so on we are attempting to keep within inflation. So it's those sorts of issues that we need to look at.
Cas Covadia, BUSA CEO, good to have your time, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.